Three young boys take a trip downtown, all by themselves, for the very first time.
The boys say they're going to see a movie, but they wander all over the place.
Little do they know, their first unsupervised outing will also be their last. The boys don't come home that night, and no one knows where they could be. Until 2 days later, when their bodies are discovered.
They're naked and piled up in a ditch like cordwood.
It will take almost 40 years for investigators to figure out what happened. Will it be too late for justice to prevail?
The unsolved ones, we have to stand up
and approach these cases in a way outside the box.
Let the world know, is those out there that did commit a murder, there are people that are coming after you.
There's just a lot of good people trying to do the right thing.
Because it's something that you have to be passionate about.
Solve this, bring some peace to the family at least. Just doing my job.
On the night of Sunday, October 16th, 1955, Malcolm Peterson and Anton Schlussler Sr. go to the Jefferson Park Police Station in Chicago to report their sons missing.
Sergeant George Murphy is manning the front desk when the two fathers come in. They're quite upset, but Sergeant Murphy does his best to get all the facts.
Earlier that afternoon, Robert Peterson, age 14, John Schlussler, age 13, and Anton Schlussler Jr., age 11, leave their middle-class homes on Chicago's northwest side and head downtown to see a movie. They don't come home.
Even though the boys haven't been gone long enough to be considered missing, Sergeant Murphy makes a telephone call to police headquarters to get the hunt for the boys started.
When the boys don't turn up that night or the next day, their parents pray for their safe return. On Tuesday, October 18th, Mrs. Peterson goes to 2 TV stations to record messages pleading for help to find the missing boys. They schedule the messages to air that evening. But before they do, the Cook County Sheriff's Office receives a call that a gruesome discovery has been made in the Robinson Woods area of the Cook County Forest Preserves.
When liquor salesman Victor Livingston goes to a wooded area west of the city to eat his lunch, something on the side of the road catches his eye. 3 bodies piled on top of each other.
He rushes to a nearby tavern to report what he's found. When they arrive on the scene, investigators find the bodies of 3 naked boys lying on their backs in a 2-foot deep ditch.
They're smudged with dirt and blood. The oldest boy appears to have been slashed 14 times in the head with what appears to be an axe or a hunting knife. The other 2 boys have been struck in the face with what appears to be the flat part of a knife.
I don't think anyone is ever prepared to see a sight like that. 3 kids dead, dumped in a ditch. The fact that they're naked makes it much more shocking and raises the question, is this a sex crime? Many are convinced it is.
In spite of the more visible wounds, marks on the victim's body suggest their cause of death to be strangulation.
Marks on the victim's necks suggest strangulation by bare hands in the case of the 2 youngest boys, and a cord or a rope in the case of the oldest. They've been dead since Sunday night.
The coroner, Walter E. McCarran, theorizes about the dirt and marks on the bodies.
At first, the boys are bound and gagged with adhesive tape and held captive in a filthy place. Later, they are dumped in the forest.
McCarran believes they're transported to the forest in a vehicle of some sort.
Marks on the backs of Anton and Robert suggest they were lying on a rubber mat in the rear of a car. Anton's back also exhibits burn marks which might be made from dragging him across pavement.
While examining the three bodies, investigators notice a tire track on the ground. They call a forensics team to the crime scene.
Investigators make a plaster cast of a tire track in the parking area near the ditch and send it to the crime lab for comparison.
Surprisingly, the examination of the bodies shows no signs of molestation, which is contrary to what the investigators were expecting.
If it's not a sex crime, what is it?
Sadly, for all confirmed, the victims are identified as Robert Peterson, John Schuessler, and Anton Schuessler Jr., leaving their families inconsolable. At the morgue, Anton Schuessler Sr. cries out and collapses when he sees his sons. Malcolm Peterson sobs quietly while identifying his son's body and says, "We were more like buddies than father and son. He was a good boy." Robert Peterson is the oldest child of Malcolm and Dorothy Peterson. He has 3 siblings. His dad works as a carpenter, and the family of 6 lives comfortably in their home on the northwest side of Chicago. Robert loves sports, especially baseball. He plays in the Pony League in nearby Norwood Park. Robert attends James B. Farnsworth Elementary School, where he is in grade 8. John and Anton Schuessler Jr. are the only children of Eleanor and Anton Schuessler Sr. They live in a brand new bungalow on the northwest side of Chicago. Anton Sr. loves his sons more than anything. He says, "They are my life." Like their friend Robert, they attend James B. Farnsworth Elementary School, where John is in grade 8 and Anton is in grade 6. All 3 are good students, whose work is described as average or better. On Sunday, October 16th, 1955, shortly before 3 p.m., John and Anton Schuessler bike over to their friend Robert's place, which is about 7 blocks away.
It's the first time their parents are allowing them to go into downtown Chicago on their own, and they're excited to take in a movie.
Chicago is the largest city in the American Midwest. Founded in 1830, it quickly grows into an industrial metropolis. By the 1950s, factory jobs are leveling off, and more people are moving to the suburbs. Still, downtown Chicago has a lot to offer. Restaurants, movie theaters, bowling alleys. It's a vibrant and exciting place to be, especially for 3 kids from the Northwest Side.
The Northwest Side is a place a lot of people call home. A lot of families live there. It's friendly, safe, and community-oriented.
For many, there's a general feeling that Chicago in 1955 is a place where the streets are safe for children to play and explore. And the parents of John and Anton Schuessler and Robert Peterson likely feel the same way.
The 3 friends leave the Peterson house approximately 3 p.m. They have a total of $4 between them, which is enough to cover the cost of a movie at the Loop Theater downtown.
The film starts at 4 p.m., but investigators can't confirm if the boys actually go there.
Their first known stop is at the Garland Building at 111 Wabash Avenue, which is only a 4-minute walk from the Loop Theater. Robert Peterson signs in at 6 p.m. in the lobby. It's possible he's there to use the bathroom.
Witnesses place the boys at the Monte Cristo bowling alley at West Montrose Avenue sometime between 7:15 and 7:45 p.m.
The witnesses describe them as wearing jeans and baseball jackets. One guy asks them if they're going to bowl, and they answer, "Not unless you're going to pay for it."
The manager of the Drake bowling lanes, also on West Montrose Avenue, remembers seeing the boys at his place around 8 p.m. They don't bowl, and they only stay a few minutes. They're also spotted at Garden Bowling Alley on North Milwaukee Avenue at 8:40 p.m.
The bowling alleys are a fair distance from the theater and Garland building, 8 or 10 miles away. That's too far to walk. So how are they getting around without money?
Several witnesses report seeing the boys hitchhiking. One even remembers giving them a ride.
A bus driver remembers dropping the boys off on Lawrence Avenue at 8:52 p.m. They're later spotted on the corner of Lawrence and Milwaukee. Anton is standing with his thumb out, while the other two boys wait in a doorway several feet away.
Each witness seems to place them closer to home. Lawrence and Milwaukee is only 2 miles from Robert's house. But unfortunately, there are no more sightings of Robert, John, and Anton Jr. that night.
Based on their stomach contents, they are killed between 9:30 and 10 p.m.
Their bodies are most likely dumped in the forest on Tuesday morning, tossed from a vehicle like sacks of potatoes.
Even the most seasoned detectives agree that this is a shocking crime.
There's no clear reason or motive. Who would have done this to 3 innocent boys?
Coroner Walter McCarran offers up 2 theories about the killer.
Is it the work of a madman, or possibly a gang who abducted the kids for fun and then became fearful of getting caught?
Either way, if the murders of Robert, John, and Anton are the result of a random, unmotivated attack, they could prove very hard to solve. On Sunday, October 16, 1955, Robert Peterson, John Schuessler, and Anton Schuessler Jr. leave their homes on the northwest side to see a movie at downtown Chicago's Loop Theater.
It's the first time their parents are allowing them to go into downtown Chicago on their own.
The boys don't come home that night and seem to vanish without a trace until their bodies are found naked and lifeless in a forest ditch.
I don't think anyone is ever prepared to see a sight like that.
Their families are devastated. Investigators believe it's the work of a madman, or possibly a gang. But the motive for the killing remains unknown, and there are no obvious suspects. On Wednesday, October 19, 1955, investigators launch a massive search involving 100 people, 50 of which are members of the military.
The plan is to search the forest all around where the 3 boys were found, looking for evidence.
Anton Schuessler Sr. and Malcolm Peterson take time off work to help in the search for clues.
The team gathers up a vast array of possible clues, things like a black rubber mat from a car, fragments of 2 pairs of blue jeans, a leather glove, a stained and torn t-shirt, a piece of cotton underwear, and a man's blood-stained coat.
Other items sent to the crime lab include a 12-inch long piece of rope and a length of wire about a yard long.
None of these items provide any definite leads.
On October 24, 1955, Police Commissioner Timothy J. O'Connor puts together a 50-person unit to handle the case. On the same day, the first possible suspect emerges.
A 55-year-old man who works in a candy store near the Peterson home walks out of his apartment, dressed in his best clothing, and vanishes. He leaves behind all of his belongings and his pet dog.
To some, this feels like more than a coincidence. Investigators spend many hours trying to track the mysterious man down. But he is nowhere to be found. On October 26, 1955, police hold 5 male suspects for further questioning into the murder of the 3 boys. They give the 5 men lie detector tests. One of those 5 men is a 33-year-old named Charles Dahlquist. A married couple remembers seeing him under a bridge with Anton Schuessler on July 15th and are asked to pick him out of a police lineup.
They give Dahlquist 3 lie detector tests, all of which are inconclusive.
With no positive results from the lie detector tests, none of the 5 men are implicated in the crime, and they all are let go. Investigators are also on the hunt for a bushy-haired man who Robert's father sees talking with youngsters in a pool hall the night of Saturday, October 22nd.
The suspect flees when Mr. Peterson tries to question him.
The investigation seems to finally heat up when an old blue car is found abandoned on the southwest side of Chicago.
Witnesses recall seeing a car like that in the Robinson Woods just a few hours before the discovery of the 3 bodies.
Inside the abandoned car are 3 pairs of blue jeans, which are what the victims were wearing the night they disappear. There is also a white flannel shirt, which might be a match for Anton's.
Investigators send the clothing to the lab for proper analysis. Unfortunately, the Petersons and the Schuesslers agree that these clothes do not belong to their children. A month after the murders, Anton Schuessler Sr. dies of a heart attack while receiving treatment for depression, brought on by the death of his sons.
Everyone who knew him or knows the case seems to agree. He died of a broken heart.
Eleanor Schuessler now grieves the loss of her entire family and faces economic ruin as she's left without income and a significant mortgage to pay. The Chicago Tribune encourages readers to send contributions. With the case seemingly at a standstill, Mrs. Schuessler and the Petersons allow the bodies of their sons to be exhumed.
There could be any number of reasons to exhume a body: new technologies, new techniques, or just a feeling that something might have been missed the first time. In this case, the main objective is to take scrapings from the toenails and fingernails to find more traces of the rare metal found during the original autopsy. A good enough sample could lead to the plant or factory where the killer works.
The exhumation pays off when tiny grains of that metal are revealed.
The examiner also finds traces of a powerful insecticide and bone meal in the wounds on Robert's scalp. This could suggest the weapon is something like a handheld gardening rake. The strangest revelation is the evidence of hay in the boy's lungs.
How these things go together is unclear, but an intensive search of metalworking establishments, as well as golf courses, greenhouses, florist shops, and parks within a 400 square mile area yields nothing.
These things could be found in a fertilizer used by any private homeowner.
None of it leads to a viable suspect. The case goes cold. The naked, lifeless bodies of Robert Peterson, John Schuessler, and Anton Schuessler Jr. are found in a forest ditch on the outskirts of Chicago.
I don't think anyone is ever prepared to see a sight like that.
Their families are devastated. Months of investigation by a task force that includes 50 people yield many clues, but no solid leads or suspects. The grieving families give permission for the bodies to be exhumed and examined for further evidence.
There could be any number of reasons to exhume a body. New technologies, new techniques, or just a feeling that something might have been missed the first time. In this case, the main objective is to take scrapings from the toenails and fingernails to find more traces of the rare metal found during the original autopsy. A good enough sample could lead to the plant or factory where the killer works.
They find traces of rare metal, pesticide, bone meal, and hay in the boy's lungs. None of it leads to a viable suspect. The case goes cold. It's now 1 year after the murders, and investigators are disappointed that they still have no solid leads. The Special Investigative Unit welcomes a new leader, Lieutenant Joseph Morris, the third to hold the reins since the investigation began.
He is determined to solve the case. He says it may take a month, a year, 5 years, but it will be solved.
In the meantime, all the stress and pressure is taking its toll. While working on the case, 3 members of the Special Investigative Unit suffer heart attacks.
Stress can cause serious health problems, including heart attacks.
The 3 officers all recover, but are reassigned to other, less stressful cases. It's now 2 years since the murders, and investigators are still striving to get justice for the families and their murdered sons. The Petersons hold a night of devotion in their home. Eleanor Schuessler has remarried and is now Eleanor Kujawa. She still grieves for her sons. She says, "I'm always hoping they find who did it. That's one of the things I live for."
But the hopes seem to get slimmer as the time passes.
3 years later, since the murders, there have been no significant developments. The Crime Detection Institute is a civic group in Chicago. The Crime Detection Institute has been offering $100,000 for any information that can lead them to the killer. Today, they announced they are withdrawing that reward. The reason? They say that the crimes appear now to be insoluble. In 1960, a ray of hope breaks through. While digging through old files, detectives notice something intriguing from the days leading up to the murders.
On October 8, 1955, Robert and John, like everyone else in their class, fill out a questionnaire. Among the many questions is the usual one: do you know anybody who is trying to hurt you?
Stranger than the question itself are the answers that Robert and John give. They both say yes.
John and Robert are the only kids in their class who answer yes to that question. And 8 days later, they're dead. That's an unbelievable coincidence.
The school informs police about the unusual yes answers, and investigators attempt to question all of John and Robert's classmates.
The issue with questioning 13 and 14-year-olds is that their parents must be present in the room. Teenagers don't always want to tell the whole truth in front of their parents. Some parents might even advise them not to get involved.
Investigators question 50 students, but no useful information is collected.
Now, 5 years later, all those kids are adults. They might be more willing to talk.
The hunch pays off as many former classmates recall Robert and John being afraid of someone. Detectives are convinced that those boys knew their killer or killers. And more importantly, that the killer is still on the northwest side of Chicago.
5 years is a long time to keep an investigation alive. But thanks to the new information, the mystery of who killed Robert Peterson and John and Anton Schuessler could finally be on the verge of being solved.
For 5 years, there have been no serious suspects in the murders of Robert Peterson, age 14, John Schuessler, age 13, and Anton Schuessler Jr., age 11. Police believe that the two oldest boys may know their killer.
On October 8, 1955, Robert and John fill out a questionnaire. Among the many questions is the usual one: do you know anybody who is trying to hurt you?
Stranger than the question itself are the answers that Robert and John give. They both say yes.
John and Robert are the only kids in their class who answer yes to that question. They question 50 former classmates and friends in the hope of figuring out who it is.
Unfortunately, after weeks and months of further investigation, all new leads come to nothing. In 1966, Sergeant George Murphy, the officer at the front desk when the boys were reported missing, the one who takes the call that gets the entire investigation started, retires after 37 years on the force. Again, the case files gather dust, but while working on another murder case, that of wealthy stable owner George Jane, State Police Officer Lieutenant David Ham goes through a box of reports.
The box is full of detailed reports on prime suspect Silas Jane, who is George's brother and his associates, one of whom is a guy named Kenneth Hansen.
Kenneth Hansen works for Silas Jane at Idle Hour Stables, and the two are reputed to have a very close relationship.
The weird thing is that amongst all the reports about Silas Jane, there are a few that reference the 1955 murders of Robert Peterson, John Schuessler, and Anton Schuessler Jr.
Why they're in there isn't clear. But after carefully reading all of the reports, Lieutenant Ham starts to suspect that the Idle Hour Stables is where the boys were killed. On February 8th, 1971, Lieutenant Ham brings in Kenneth Hansen for questioning. Kenneth refuses to talk about George Jane, so Lieutenant Ham takes another approach.
He asks Kenneth about himself, his time in the Army, and his experience in the horse business. Surprisingly, Kenneth opens up and talks.
He learns that Kenneth is from Chicago's northwest side, and that he has a long history of working with horses, including at Idle Hour Stables in 1955.
Kenneth has no idea that Lieutenant Ham is interested in the murders of the three boys. He thinks it's all about the George Jane murder. He talks openly about everything except George Jane.
Police think there is a connection to the George Jane murder case. Playing a game of cat and mouse, Lieutenant Ham is careful not to tip his hand as he gathers as much information as he can that could connect Kenneth to the murders of the three boys.
He does a good job, but unfortunately, there's not enough to prove anything.
Ultimately, Silas Jane and a couple of other men are convicted of the murder of George Jane, which is said to have been the culmination of a bitter feud between the two brothers over competing interests in the show horse industry. All charges against Kenneth Hansen are dropped. As for the murders of the 3 kids in 1955, Lieutenant Ham packs the box up, puts it back in storage, and the case goes cold again. On April 9th, 1976, Captain Patrick J. Dealey, head of the investigation until his retirement in 1970, dies at 69. 10 years later, and more than 30 years after the murders of her only sons, Eleanor Schussler Kujawa dies and is buried beside them in a River Grove cemetery. While investigating a series of barn burnings and horse killings believed to be part of an insurance scam, agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives talked to an informant named William Red Wemett. Red isn't much help until he unexpectedly tells them that Kenneth Hansen murdered Robert Peterson, John Schussler, and Anton Schussler Jr.
Anyone who deals with informants can tell you they don't always tell the whole truth.
According to Red, after being in an intimate relationship in the 1960s, Kenneth tells him about the murders during an afternoon of drinking in 1968.
He says he's having sex with one boy when Robert Peterson confronts him and threatens to tell his parents. Fearing exposure, he kills them.
Red goes on to say that he's not the only one to hear that story.
Red seems reliable because he's helped them before, but investigators need more details about this.
In 1968, Kenneth has another young lover named Roger Spry, and Roger knows all about it. Coincidentally, Roger Spry's name has already come up during their investigation, and they suspect him of burning a barn in 1970.
The only problem is that no one knows where Roger is now. However, there's no statute of limitations on arson, so they issue a warrant for his arrest and wait.
In the summer of 1993, Roger Spry is arrested in a tavern brawl in Arizona and charged with disorderly conduct. Investigators fly out to Arizona to question him about Kenneth Hansen and the murder of the 3 boys in 1955. Roger confirms everything. When asked about the barn arson in 1970, Roger admits that he did it for Kenneth Hansen. As the investigation begins to close in on him, Kenneth Hansen begins to get nervous.
He actually asks his neighbor if police are watching his house. Not a very normal thing to do. He packs a suitcase and prepares to leave town.
Investigators need to decide if they have enough evidence to prove Kenneth Hansen is guilty of a crime that took place almost 40 years ago. If they don't, the murders could remain unsolved forever. Police believe that Kenneth Hansen is the man who killed Robert Peterson, John Schussler, and Anton Schussler Jr. in 1955. A trusted informant describes Kenneth Hansen's confession to the murders.
He says he's having sex with one boy when Robert Peterson confronts him and threatens to tell his parents. Fearing exposure, he kills them.
Red goes on to say that he's not the only one to hear that story. In 1968, Kenneth has another young lover named Roger Spry, and Roger knows all about it. Coincidentally, Roger Spry's name has already come up during their investigation. In the summer of 1993, Roger Spry is arrested in a tavern brawl in Arizona. Investigators fly out to question him about Kenneth Hansen and the murder of the 3 boys in 1955. Roger confirms everything. When asked about the barn arson in 1970, Roger admits that he did it for Kenneth Hansen. Police arrest 61-year-old Kenneth Hansen and charge him with arson for burning a stable in 1970. The arrest triggers phone calls from people claiming that Hansen picked them up while hitchhiking and molested them. The details sound all too plausible in relation to what happened to the three boys in 1955. Hansen says he fantasizes about young boys.
During questioning, he admits that he's had sex with as many as 1,000 boys since the 1950s.
Investigators theorize that on the night of October 16, 1955, Kenneth sees the three boys and pulls over. He calls them over to his car. He asks the boys where they are headed. Kenneth offers a ride.
Kenneth lives nearby in the 5000 block of North Claremont Avenue, so it makes sense. And he freely admits to regularly picking up boys for sex.
This wasn't the boys' first time hitchhiking, so they agreed. After entering the car, the boys were never seen again. With the three boys now in the car, he drives them to the Idle Hours stable.
He tries to pay the boys to perform a sex act. But when they refuse, he becomes violent and murders them.
Police place Hansen under arrest for the murders. In early September 1995, the trial of Kenneth Hansen begins.
The prosecution paints a picture of a man who has sex with a lot of young boys.
Roger Spry is a star witness.
He meets Hansen when he's 11, and Hansen offers him a place to stay in exchange for work. While living with Hansen, his wife, and 2 children, Roger is molested by Hansen. This continues for 7 years.
When Roger is 15, Hansen gets drunk and describes the events at the Idle Hours stable on the night of October 16th, 1955.
Hansen's fantasy, according to Roger, is to have sex with 2 boys at once. He sends Robert away to brush the horses so he can be alone with the 2 younger boys. He begins molesting John and Anton Jr., but Robert unexpectedly returns and catches him in the act. Kenneth grabs Robert Peterson in a chokehold. And says he accidentally chokes him to death. Stating he had no choice but to kill the other 2 kids, he murders them as well.
Roger testifies that Hansen referred to the incident one more time.
Hansen catches Roger pickpocketing some money that should go to the stable. So he says, "Roger, you keep it up, and you're going to end up just like that Peterson kid."
The prosecution calls another powerful witness, Herb Hollitz, one of the many people to contact police when Hansen is first arrested.
Herb Hollitz is the son of a Chicago police officer. He testifies that he's been keeping Hansen's secret for 40 years.
Herb says he's known about Kenneth killing those boys since 1 week after the murders.
The reason he keeps quiet is that he's having a homosexual relationship with Hansen, and he doesn't want his father or anyone else to find out.
A hard-nosed cop in 1955 might not take that news well.
But there's another, more compelling reason for young Herb to keep quiet.
Hansen makes Herb swear that he won't tell anyone or his brother will kill him.
Kenneth's brother is a known enforcer for the mob. That scares Herb badly.
A few months later, Herb moves to Arizona and tries to forget. When he sees news of Hansen's arrest, he calls his daughter to confess.
It's Herb's daughter who informs the police.
Herb is so scared of Kenneth's brother that, even after all these years, he refuses to testify against Kenneth unless authorities prove to him that Kenneth's brother is dead.
On September 13th, 1995, after an hour and 40 minutes of deliberation, the jury finds Kenneth Hansen guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He's sentenced to concurrent prison terms between 200 and 300 years. On May 18, 2000, the Illinois Appellate Court overturns the 1995 conviction.
They determined that the jury should not have heard evidence that Hansen cruised the streets, picking up boys for sexual relations.
On August 12, 2002, the retrial of Kenneth Hansen begins.
The defense does their best, but once again, Hansen is found guilty and sentenced to 200 to 300 years.
Hansen tries to appeal one more time in 2004, but is denied.
There's a sense of relief to finally bring justice and closure to the families of the victims. Unfortunately, many of them did not live to see it, but it's important for those who did.
Sadly, I think this case changed our world a little bit, or at least our perception of it. We used to think that the streets were safe for children and that truly horrible things could not happen to good kids from good homes. Now we know that isn't true.
The truth is that this case was almost unsolved. If it wasn't for the hard work and perseverance of the many investigators, it might still be.
On September 12, 2007, Kenneth Hansen dies in a correctional center in Pontiac, Illinois, a small consolation to the families that were so devastated in the murders of Robert, John, and Anton Jr.